Good morning, everyone. Good to see you this morning. My name is Randy Yorson, Organic Dyes and Pigments. Let me tell you right off the bat, for those of you new to this environment, we've been a corporate member for over 50 years. Organic in our name is the old-fashioned organic chemistry. It's not twigs and berries and nuts and cabbage and all natural stuff. So we're talking dyes as they were meant to be, the ones that work. I hope my talk today is engaging and wonderful. I know the talks this afternoon, starting at 12, will be engaging and wonderful. If I happen to bomb, the talks this afternoon I know will be engaging and wonderful. So let's go for a ride. Organic dye, yes, we're all about putting color on things, and we're going to find out in a little bit. Now we're talking about how easy it is to take color off of things. We're a supplier of dyes to a number of industries, including textiles, acids, basics, directs, pigment dispersions, polymerics, reactive dyes, solvent dyes, and then specialty chemicals to help you put the dye on the fiber or fabric, keep it on there, and sometimes to help you remove it. We deal with all different kinds of fabrics: cotton, polyester, nylon, acetate, wools, blends, silk, acrylic. Also some of the name brand, Nomex, fiberglass, Kevlar, Vectran. If you stop by our booth today at after the show, at 12 o'clock we're open, you'll see that we have some cording, some Nomex cording, some Kevlar cording, some Vectran cording with dyes or pigments on it. Come on by and take a look. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about performance fabrics. What's new in performance fabrics, especially in regards to dyes. We're going to talk about non-staining polymeric dyes. This is a fairly new development in the last 15 years. It's finding more and more uses in textiles. We're going to talk about garment dyeing, a resurgence in garment dyeing. And we're going to talk about pigment dispersions. Still the most versatile color class out there. So let's talk about performance apparel. Now these, as most of you know, are garments that perform a function for some purpose or some purpose. Water removal, stain, oil repellency, biometrics they're building into it now. Performance apparel is it's a huge growing class out there. Athleisure wear, athletic wear, stuff that you wear while you're on the Zoom meeting that nobody can see. All of that is under performance apparel. These are normally dyed with acids, disperse, sometimes pigments. Most of the fibers used in performance apparel are nylon, polyester, polypropylene, spandex. Spandex, we love spandex. And I don't know why I have pigments there, but maybe because spandex is loving the pigments. So there, right there we have one of the garments, performance type garment out there. As I explained to you, colorants used on these are acids, disperse, and pigments. But let's take a little deep dive into the acid dyes. You know, that's a huge class of dyes used in a lot of different industries. Textiles, of course, being the main one. Mostly used on nylon, but also used on natural fibers and a number of other ones. There are a lot of different types of acid dyes out there that we have available, depending on the fabric, the processing conditions, time, temperature, heat, fastness properties that you want. And of course, with some performance fabrics out there, they have different finishes. Sometimes they're mixtures of different fabrics, layers, laminates. Acid dyes can work in a lot of different ways. There are regular level dyeing acids. These are the mono and diazos. We've got the various different non-chrome acid dyes. Select fast striking acid dyes, depending on your fabric blend. You may want part of it to strike faster than the other. We have different metallized acid dyes. Now, typically the metallized dyes will give you better wash fastness, light fastness, those kind of things, depending on the blend used. So we have the 1-to-1 acid metallized, the 2-to-1 pre-metallized. Most of the metals in these are chromium, so a lot of people do sometimes shy away from that depending on your effluent conditions. Again, we have select different fiber affinities. because nobody just dyes nylon, especially in performance wear. Or nobody just dyes spandex. It's usually a blend of materials out there. Let's move on now to polymerics. This is a fairly new, I'm going to call them class of dye, but they're not really a dye in the old-fashioned sense of the word, or a pigment. It's a mixture of polymers with dye chromophores grafted on them to give them all different kinds of wonderful properties. These are only manufactured as liquids, and they are what are known as non-staining. Totally not. You can take a drum of this polymeric dye, stick your hands in it, take your hands out, wash them, the dye comes right off. Now, I've spent most of my life, as most of you who are involved in color, trying to keep dye on the fabric. We're going to tell you that you can use these when you want dye to come off of the fabric. No settling occurs in these. They're non-ionic in nature. They're bright, clean colors. They're used in a variety of areas. HI&I, soaps, detergents. You put a little dye in your detergent, you use this because you don't want that detergent to stain stuff. They're used in agriculture. They add these to fertilizers and things that when they're spraying the fertilizer over a field, they can see where it goes and then it washes away the first rain that comes by. The most interesting part in regards that you might be interested in is the fugitive nature of these dyes. Let me give you an example. Here is a skein. I think some of you can see. I'm going to bring it down here to the audience. You see a little bit of color on that? See a little bit of color on that? That's blue color on it. Barry, what fiber is this?
Nylon.
That's nylon. This is nylon. It's got a non-staining dye on it.
Actually, carpet nylon.
Carpet nylon. It's got a non-staining dye on it. It's put on there either to identify that fiber in regards to other ones. So you can see over there, you have certain fibers you might want to put the dye on there. Or it's used for fiber ID or even application ID, even branding in some way. But what happens, you go from this, a quick cold water rinse, to this. All the dye is gone. That's the fugitive properties of these non-staining dyes. They're relatively inexpensive. They're relatively, color strength is strong because most of the times you want just a light tint on it. But they are growing in the industry as, again, fiber ID, but they're also using marking pens that wash off, finger paints that wash off easily like that. It's a huge growing industry. Come see us at our booth if you want to know more about these. Garment dyeing. Oddly enough, if you were in the talk earlier on, you heard about the time capsule. And in that time capsule is a tie-dye shirt from Dynamite. Garment dyeing is meeting a resurgence right now. Why? It could be a lot of things. It could be the whole logistics problem out there. It could be COVID related. More people were at home doing a little light t-shirt dyeing, tie dyeing, that kind of thing. The industry is growing up around that. So it's not, tie dyeing, garment dyeing is not only tie dye, but tie dye is the coolest look to it. Typically, it's done on cotton, poly-cotton blends, and sometimes nylon fabrics. Dyes used are reactive for the most part, the different reactive type dyes, some directs and some disperse. The methods of garment dyeing. You can take your own wash machine and do it, but in large production they use rotary pocket machines to do the various type of garment dyings. And laundry washer, you can do pigments through those kind of things. Sometimes you might have to add some chemical to your fabric before you do the dyeing to help the dye affix to it better. A lot of different ways of doing garment dyeing. We've been doing it for a number of years, and like I said, there's been a resurgence in garment dyeing. So on our website, we have application notes on how to garment dye with a lot of different ways. Cotton's pigments, cotton's reactive, cotton's with directs, reactive MX type, cotton with bifunctional, and probably a lot more. There's a wealth of knowledge there if you want to get into the whole garment dyeing industry or if you're involved with it now. Our last topic is going to be about pigments. I heard also in the address earlier this morning, AATCC, not your grandfather's AATCC. Well, pigment dispersions are no longer your grandfather's pigments. They've come a long way. They're now available with nano pigments, super fine pigments that can get into a lot of things that are used even in inkjet printing. You can get different types of dispersions, not just aqueous. There's dispersions now available in glycols and urethane, other carriers like that are available out there. The thing about an application method for pigments, you can print them, you can inkjet them, pad dye, you can coat pigments, spray pigments, and of course the fibers that you put them on, you can put a pigment on just about anything as long as you have the right binding method to keep that pigment on what you're putting on. And of course that binding method depends on the chemistry involved, how you want to keep the pigment on there, the processing that you have at your disposal. Do you have cure temperatures, not cure temperatures? So pigments have been around a long time, but they're really moving into the new century with a lot more versatility and the ability to put them on a lot more fabrics. So don't think of your pigment as your grandfather's type of dye. Think of it as something new to try for the future. Well, that's going to end my talk right now. Before I go, though, I want to remind you, over at our booth, we'll be open at 12 o'clock. You can enter your name in a drawing for a Yeti, ORCO Yeti tumbler, and we'll be happy to answer any other technical questions regarding what I talked about today at your leisure and talk to you about that. Thank you very much, everybody.